Okay, today I'm going to show you how to create a dynamic highlighter of sorts. And so specifically for this example, I'm going to show you how to create a calculation so that regardless of whatever filter you put on here, it will always highlight half the results to, I don't know, emphasize top or bottom differences, if you will. And so if you look here, and actually I think what I'll do is I'm going to put let's try putting the index to see the numbers. So there's 17 entries. It's broken down at exactly 8 to 9, which is fine. Every time I take away something, it cuts it down by perfectly half. Okay, and so that's the effect that we're going for today. And of course, you don't have to set it at half. You can set it at whatever you want. But once again, just for today's example, I'll just do it by half. So, let's start from scratch, and then let's get rid of some of the calculations that we're going to be using. Okay. That's fine. We'll delete all of them so it's happy. Okay, so for this case, we're going to use, so the data set that I'm using is Global Superstore data set. Honestly, it's not relevant for, I mean, I guess if you want to practice one-to-one, it's relevant, but I'm using the Global Superstore data set. It comes with Tableau, very typical data set that people train on, so a lot of things, a lot of dimensions you can use. I'm just going to use subcategory because it's small, but it's big enough to illustrate the point. I could use sales or profit, doesn't really matter. I could use, I would just use profit. Like I said, it doesn't matter. Okay, and so, well, that's going to be kind of wonky. Just visually, it's going to look kind of dumb. Let me change it to sales. Okay, sales. Okay, so here's a bunch of sales. I'm going to get rid of the title just for a little prettiness. Oops. Okay. So like I said, how do you do it so you highlight exactly half? Part of it is going to be what is the value measure that you want to highlight on? In this case, we're going to use it by sales, and so we're going to use the rank function. We need to use the rank function because we need something to tell Tableau sort of where to dissect, okay? In addition to that, you need something that tells Tableau what are the sort of the upper bounds of this data set. And so to do that, we're going to first create a size calculation. So calculate field size. So size is a function that Tableau already has. Sometimes if you don't quite remember it, but you know it exists, you can always click on this button and look at their dictionary. And then also next to the dictionary is a nice little example and definition. Okay, so we're going to use size because it returns the number of rows in a partition, and that's useful for doing easy math of determining, okay, how to get 30% of it always highlighted, 20%, so on and so forth. Okay, so we'll do it like this, and because we want this sort of as a dimension, we're going to change it from continuous to discrete, okay, so that we can put it next here. If we did not, let's take it back. If we didn't change it to discrete, it's going to treat it like a measure. And if I were to double click on it, it'd create a new graph where they're all 17. It says these numbers because the labeling is kind of funky, but if I were to accurately do it, this would all say 17 to reflect. And you can see it in the tooltip, 17 for every one of them. So if you want to look at size and sort of analyze whether it's doing the right thing, and if you want to especially look at it from a dimension point of view, convert it to discrete to sort of to get it to do what you want. Okay. Now to do this, you don't have to do this. I'm just doing this to illustrate what we're trying to do. But yeah, you don't need to put this row to actually do the highlighting part. The next thing you need to do is you need to get rank to measure where it's at. Rank, as well as size, is a function that Tableau already has. Unlike size, you need to dictate some boundaries, some parameters, and one of the parameters is you have to tell Tableau what are you ranking it on, and it explains it here. Okay, and in our case, because we are doing this all on sales, we're gonna do it on sales. Okay, the problem with this is ranking has to use aggregates. Okay, and sales is just an individual number per row. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna aggregate it somehow using sum transformation. We'll use sum, and we'll use sum for that example. After that, last thing you need to do is just tell the rank function how do you want to sort it, and we do it descending. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 versus 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay, so once you get that, once again I'm going to convert it to a discrete value so we can kind of look at what it's doing. Once you do that, here's essentially what you have. You have now something that measures the bounds of this chart, and so 17 is correctly how many entries, and then something that sort of uh, identifies where in place are these subcategories. So number one will always be phones, especially if we're ranking by sales, and the last will always be labels. Like regardless of how we filter this, it will always accurately tell you by sales what's number one and what's last. And so the last one is if you do it randomly, once again, number one is phones because it's the most. Okay, so that's why ranking is important and not using the index function, because index, it's indiscrete, like it doesn't care what the values are, it just tells you the placement, so it wouldn't work. So once you have something that sort of measures where exactly in place in the data set everything is, and something that's dynamic, you can just write the highlighting logic right away. And so what that is you're going to create a list of true false results, so that Tableau knows how to color. So I'll do this. I'll create one new field. Call this highlight, and the math is going to be, okay, let's take the boundaries and divide it by whatever our condition is. In this case, we want to just break it by half so that every time it highlights the bottom and top halves different colors. So to do that, we'll do an if statement. So if the rank, which is the position, is essentially less than the total size, but specifically the cutoff point. So if we're doing 15%, 50%, we want to find out all the values above and below halfway. Okay. So if the position, so the way to read this is if the position of the data row is less than half the size, half of 17, then give it an outcome. In this case, it will do true. Else false, end. Okay, and that's all we need to do. Now, one small caveat if things get wonky is just realize that with odd numbers, this does result in a float. You can change to an int if you want to make it a little bit cleaner, so just depends on what happens. So do highlight, and once again I'm going to put it here just to show you what's going on. So if our intention is to highlight half of it, we can see that our highlight function successfully worked. It has successfully identified everything above and beyond this halfway mark. So the next part is just to color code it right here. Like, there you go. And the beauty of this is, and the beauty of like not using a simple filter, is it's dynamic. Like regardless of what you do to this, it's going to always calculate the right cutoff mark. And so what I mean by that is if you take the subcategory and just start taking things away, it'll always adjust. So we go here. Okay, show the filter. We go here. So right now there's 17. I take away 1, it readjusts. Now there's 8, 8 on both sides. Take away 3, readjust. 13, so it's probably like 6, 7-ish split on both sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4, 5, 6. So it works as it's supposed to. Here's the guts of what's going on. You're essentially finding out each row's position. You're finding the total amount of entries in there, and then you're creating a list of true false statements so that the color can know what to apply to each result, and you can see that here also. So if you want to make it pretty, I mean something like that. So now it will always give you half, and filtering or sorting is not going to change it. It will always accurately tell you what the bottom and top half is as whatever you dictate. So there you go.